Hi, I'm Janet Gross. Welcome to Coping Today, a show that focuses on all kinds of mental health issues. Today's topic, so important, drinking and driving. Here with me at the desk, as always, is Dr. Roy Salgado, professor of counseling at the University of Holy Cross. Okay, this is a mental health show. Mental health and DUI, there is a connection.
There is, and it can range anywhere from an instance of an individual driving under the influence of alcohol or a substance, or a pattern of behavior that goes from not only an instance, but to misuse or abuse, addiction, or dependence with regard to alcohol or a substance. And so when a person finds themselves in a situation where they have consumed an alcoholic drink, for example, or two, that would be socially acceptable in certain circumstances, with dinner, for example, and then they get behind the wheel, the impact is the same, whether it is someone who is simply enjoying an alcoholic drink, a glass of wine with a nice meal. They get behind the wheel and their reflexes are a little different, their vision's a little different, and they get into an accident, they get pulled over. The impact is the same as to whether or not you have a dependence issue. And I think that's something that needs to be delineated and made very clear to people, that the intention, the history behind it, it doesn't matter. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Not necessarily everyone who has a DUI has a substance use issue, but everyone could potentially find themselves in this situation of drinking and driving, even when you don't necessarily have a problem per se. And it's important to be mindful of that, because people tend to think that's somebody else's problem. That's something that would not happen to me. Well, you're mistaken. It's something that can happen to you and does happen to people that are in our families and in our lives.
Yeah, that you would never expect that to happen.
You would never expect it.
Because sometimes it's a poor choice, but it's always a criminal activity.
Exactly, and therein lies the thing. It's a poor choice. If you're going to drink, don't drive. If you're going to drive, don't drink. And you could be someone who, for all intents and purposes, is typically responsible, and in an instance, make a poor choice that could have fatal consequences. And so it's important to be on top of this and be mindful of it. And in particular during this time of the year, where people have a number of different opportunities to drink. And in New Orleans, quite frankly, in Louisiana, we have opportunities to drink throughout the year.
Right.
But all that being said,
encouragement to drink.
And the encouragement to drink. And so just to be aware of that, and that when you do drink, don't drive. There are a lot of alternatives out there to drinking and driving.
And things that you can plan ahead to stop yourself from doing this.
Yes.
The key thing, or just Uber there.
Absolutely. Uber, taxi, designated driver, all sorts of different ways that one could go about preventing a drinking and driving situation where some accident or fatal situation could take place.
Because when you think of, I guess when you've had a couple of drinks, you're not thinking right anyway. You're not thinking as clearly as you would, and so you think, oh, I'm good.
Yeah, and a person could say, I weigh this amount of pounds, and I've only had two beers. It doesn't matter. Yeah, maybe you weigh 250 pounds and you're a big man and you've only had 2 beers. Don't drink and drive. It's that simple.
Right, don't take the chance, because it's a chance that you may not be able to live through, or somebody else might not be able to live through your choice.
Right.
And your chance and your all that. Yeah. Okay. So why do we do that? Why do we say, well, I can do it. I'm better than that. I can do it. What's going on in our heads where we think we're better than the odds? We're better than the other people who can't drink.
And that's exactly it. We tend to think that we're better than the odds. That's something that happens to somebody else. That is not something that can happen to me. And it kind of goes in line with just mortality in general. We all are very much aware that there's no one that lives and is immortal. We all die. So I'm very much aware of that I will die one day, but I don't necessarily think about it. Other people die, but we all will die, right? And so in a similar way, there are certain things in life that we associate with happening to other and not necessarily to ourselves, and typically tragic things. If for the most part, we can live a life that doesn't tend to have many tragic things happen, although I don't know that many people escape suffering
tragedy.
or tragedy. We all experience suffering in varying degrees, but we still have this protective mechanism of thinking that really bad things happen to other people. So it's kind of built in to, otherwise, we'd fall apart if we were aware of all of the dangers out there.
Yeah, and then you'd live in fear all that, and that's not good.
And so while that serves a purpose on some level, it's a double-edged sword, because we also, the flip side of that coin, to use two idioms, is you put it off and you think that's something that happens to other people and not to me. But it does happen to you, and it can happen to you.
Okay. Before we go on, I do want to, for people who find themselves making bad decisions over and over and over and over, or trying to figure out why, a counselor can help.
Yes.
A counselor can help.
The Mary Knights of Holy Cross at the University of Holy Cross have been offering free telemental health counseling services for several years now. And so whether you're an individual who is struggling with depression, anxiety, trauma, or maybe an issue dealing with a DUI or drinking or substance use, you can go ahead and call the number on the screen, and the counselor and training will be assigned to you, and you can receive free telemental health services for the duration of time that you need it. And we're here to help and to serve.
And free.
And free.
Okay, great. We're going to take a break. When we come back, though, we're going to talk with a counselor working on the front lines of this battle, so stay with us.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut, the one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink, or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking, now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed, better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead, catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
And welcome back. As we talk about drinking and driving, we're joined now by Erin Hall, a professional counselor who works for the Jefferson Parish Diversion Program. Thanks for being here and talking about this. But let's talk about what the Jefferson Parish Diversion Program is.
Well, thank you for having me.
Sure.
So Jefferson Parish Pretrial DWI Diversion Program is an alternative for clients who receive a DWI to avoid being charged with the DWI charge. So it's an alternative for them to avoid court as best as they can to get the charge off of their record.
Okay, so this would not necessarily have to live with them forever if they go through this program.
Correct, yes. They can apply once they go through the program to get it expunged from their record. And the only individuals at that point that would be able to see the charge would be special, like law enforcement, that can log into the system. General public won't be able to see that once they get it expunged, because it's pretty much wiped off their record.
Employers, all that?
Correct. Now, if they have one currently, they can, but once they get it expunged, employers or anything won't be able to see it except for law enforcement.
Okay. So let's talk about what happens. I mean, somebody gets a DUI, they want to what kind of help is counseling in this program?
Yes, for sure. So a part of the program, there are certain requirements. Counseling is definitely one of them. It's a non-negotiable. We also have Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which is a big organization that they have to attend one of their sessions. They have to do the breathalyzer device, which is twice a day, every single day, for a minimum of 3 months, as well as random urine testing. So the counseling aspect, a part of it's because some individuals are truly suffering with substance abuse, and they tend to be in denial that they have a substance abuse issue at hand. So we like to have that as an aspect to go over the ins and outs of the consequences of receiving a DWI. It can affect you in the long run with an employer, whether you would like to, say, for instance, go to nursing school, if you have this on your record, or even for a counselor, if you have this on your record, and it's on there, that can hurt you with regards to getting employed, or the licensing board, if they see that, it can definitely put a damper on you progressing with your career.
You know, and to that point that Ms. Hall just brought up, it's not just this boogeyman type of person that can get pulled over and have a DUI on their record. It is individuals in all walks of life. Professionals, people who have licenses, who are looking to get licenses in a given profession, a nurse, a counselor, a physician, a psychiatrist, a pediatrician, a pharmacist. We've seen this. We've seen professionals wanting to go and get licensed and then having a DUI show up on their record and the impact that that could potentially have. And it's important to note that when people apply for licenses in the state of Louisiana, if you write that you...
Like driver's licenses, you're saying?
No, a professional license to practice a profession, to practice nursing, to practice counseling, to practice something of that nature, medicine. When you go and apply for that type of license, and then perhaps you say that, have you been convicted of a felony? And then you say no, because you perhaps don't necessarily think or know or aware that a DUI would be categorized as such, then you are falsifying illegal document, and then you could be denied a professional license. And so it's important to know the implications that having something like this on your record has for your, long-term work and income, if you will, if you're not aware of what this can do. So there's so many different ramifications for having a DUI on your record, in addition to having your premiums on your car insurance go up. It can impact you in so many different ways.
So, and let me just straighten this out. So if somebody does have a DUI and there was an accident and people were hurt, this would not, or killed, could they still go into a diversion program?
So if it was like a hit and run, or they damage another vehicle, they can definitely do the program. They might have to pay restitution back, but if it was, vehicle homicide or anything was involved, then it would not be eligible for diversion.
Okay, so that I wanted to make that clear so that it's not like, wait, what? Yeah, okay. All right.
And the point that Dr. Salgado said, we do require pharmacists, counselors, attorneys, that they do report to the licensing board, just because counseling is a big aspect of the program. It's important for the licensing board to know, because people might be your doctor, might be your nurse. So we would like the licensing board to know, this person did make a mistake. Are you aware of this mistake, and what further steps needs to be taken, if any, to ensure that their patients are being taken care of as well as their clients.
And again, we can't reiterate enough that this is an issue that impacts so many different people in so many different walks of life, that it's not a particular person. One might have a preconceived notion as to what a person who has a DUI might look like.
Yeah.
And
they could look like somebody you respect, your neighbor, your relative.
Exactly. And so because of that, it is important to not drink and drive, because these are poor decisions that are made by people in any walk of life, and sometimes we're surprised that somebody has made this decision at some point in their life that has led to this.
Yeah. So what can people do? What can we do to help? What can society do to stop this?
For sure. Definitely, we have taxis available if people still use taxis. There's Uber, there's Lyft. You can call a friend, phone a friend, a family member. But also, if someone is dealing with substance issues, there's NA meetings, Narcotics Anonymous, there's AA meetings they can attend. And there are so many different resources out there to help with individuals who might be suffering from substance abuse issues. They can do counseling, they can do residential, a detox program. There's so many different things out there, but ultimately, majority of the clients do make a bad decision, bad judgment call. I'm fine, I had one cocktail, I had two, I just had a glass of wine, or maybe I had a shot, I can drive, it's totally fine. But you really don't know how badly impaired you might be, and once you get yourself in that situation, the amount of consequences that follow it, it's really unfortunate. And a lot of clients that go through the program, they say it's just really not worth it. The amount of time and money, it's a lot for them to deal with. So only thing I can really truly recommend is that if you have a substance abuse issue, definitely go to AA meetings. It's free. There's so many all over the city, the state. And then also, you can talk to somebody, talk to a counselor. They're available. Some counselors specialize in substance abuse. So it's definitely available. And it's not something to be ashamed of, not something to be, like terrified, like people gonna look at me differently. People deal with it, like Dr. Salgado said, all different forms of people. They don't look a particular way. So these resources are available for a reason. So definitely please use it.
And I would say that as a society, that if we are aware of someone who is drinking and about to drive because you've had a gathering, or you've been to dinner, or you've
served the wine.
You've served the wine, then to have those courageous conversations and to say, you know what, you are in no condition to drive, or you've just had two, okay, fine, and you're speaking perhaps fine, but let's have some coffee, let's sit, let's wait a while, don't drink for the next few hours before.
Have a sandwich.
Have a sandwich, put something in your system. But to have conversations and stop someone from taking the keys and getting into a car and driving and risking their lives and the lives of others. And so having those courageous conversations, it's not always easy to do, to tell the person that you've been engaging with to say, you probably shouldn't be driving right now. Let's wait a while.
Like the guys, the friends at the bar who were taking the keys and
Right.
who were seeing while you were talking. Being a good friend is risking their friendship, to save their life. Yeah.
Definitely. Like if you see someone, like you said, drinking, and I think it takes about 1 hour for one cocktail to go through your system at least. So it's like if you're drinking 2 and 3 per hour, your body needs time to catch up, and all of a sudden it'll hit you out of nowhere, and you think you can drive, and once you're driving, that's when you start to feel impaired. You might be swerving and things like that. So if you see someone drinking a lot, they should not be driving, take the keys, or maybe let's plan, hey, we're going out for girls' night or guys' night or whatever with your family. Let one person not drink and be the designated driver. And some people think it's silly, but you can harm yourself, you can kill someone else. It's just the amount of consequences that follows it. It's just very unfortunate.
And I appreciate that one particular piece of information in terms of learning and becoming informed of how alcohol gets processed through your system, or a substance gets processed through your system, that you really need to give yourself time, that your organism has to process what it is that you've consumed. So if you are going to enjoy a glass of wine or a beverage of some sort, an alcoholic beverage, preferably do it with a meal,
right?
So your body can absorb it differently than if you're just consuming a drink on its own. It's going to hit you differently if you drink it without something in your stomach than if you have it with something in your stomach. And then conversely, if you have a second and a third. And to make more informed decisions and decide at what point is it now okay to drive. If you have a drink, there's no one saying you're not entitled as an adult to be able to make a decision to enjoy an alcoholic beverage, but to be responsible with it and let the time pass that needs to pass. And if you see someone doing something like that, then you stop them. Get them a cab, get them an Uber, get them a Lyft, get them a designated driver. You take the keys, you drive them yourself. If you haven't consumed an alcoholic beverages, just to make sure that everyone is safe.
And you were saying that once you get past the arrest or whatever, there can be, without a diversion program, because not everybody does that or can, depending on what the arrest was for, but it can be a lifetime of consequences, really, especially if you've hurt somebody or if you lost a job because of it. So many things that you're like, what one decision and the rest of my life.
Definitely. The effects that follows drinking and driving, like you said, can hurt yourself, you can hurt someone else.
Yeah, the rest of other people's lives can depend on your decision. Yeah.
Right, because it's like you always say, like, you're not only driving for yourself, you're driving for others. So whether you're sober as can be and you're not drinking, a drunk driver can hit you and you can lose your life, and they still might be alive. So it's just, you really have to truly pay attention, whether when you're drinking, whether, hey, am I okay to drive? I should not drive. Let me leave my car here. I'll get it tomorrow. There's always that. You can leave your car there, take your keys with you, call an Uber, and go back the next day and pick it up. It's definitely an option.
In addition to consuming an alcoholic beverage, one must also put into this category prescription medications too. There's probably a whole other topic that we could address.
Sure.
Driving under the influence is not only dealing with the consumption of alcoholic beverages or an illicit substance or a drug, but a particular prescription that may impair you while driving. And if you're taking a particular prescription, to be mindful of that and not drive if it's something that could potentially impair you. You know, if you're taking a Tylenol PM, you know, don't get behind the wheel.
Benadryl,
or a couple of Benadryl, do not drive, because there are certain things, while may not be illegal or illicit, the impact is the same.
Aaron, do you think that the concept or is it the impact growing, the mental impact, the social awareness of how horrible this is and how horrible it can be? Do you think that's growing at all?
To an extent, I don't think it's fully there yet. I think definitely people still think that, hey, I've only had 2 cocktails, I can drive. I definitely think that there's more to learn. The point definitely needs to get across more frequently than it is now. Majority of our clients that go through the program, they do not reoffend, but we do unfortunately have some that get another DWI, and it's really unfortunate. I just feel like there's definitely more to learn for people to really truly understand the impact that a DWI has, because we're getting so many and it's not slowing down. So I definitely think that there's more to learn.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, people don't realize, as you were explaining, the inconvenience of having a taxi, getting a taxi home and having to come back and get your car is nothing compared to the, and I'm going to put this in quotes, inconvenience or tragedy or whatever occurs because you didn't, because
Absolutely.
you drove yourself home. So I think, you know, until people understand or can commiserate or, you know, be in a situation where it affects them, I guess people just do what they want to do, huh?
Yeah. You know, in the work that I do with clients who struggle through this situation of having found themselves with a DUI, one of the things that we talk about for future planning is just to have it as part of your understanding of drinking responsibly or having something in your system and being responsible about it, is that there's going to be a cost associated with it. So for example, here in Louisiana, there's so many different wonderful, joyful things that involve alcohol,
yeah.
whether it's festivals or parties or Mardi Gras or what have you. Fine, it's part of the culture, okay. But then include in that paying for an Uber or paying for, you know, if you're gonna go into a crawfish boil, to a party, you're gonna have a few beers with crawfish, okay, Uber there, Uber back, or make a decision to drive there, but then Uber back, and then you Uber to pick up the car the next day. It's just part of the expense of being able to enjoy something, to do it responsibly, and to not put yourself at risk. Is it an inconvenience? Sure, why not? We'll say it's an inconvenience. But to your point, a lot less of an inconvenience, a cost-benefit analysis than the alternative.
So be a grown-up.
Be a grown-up.
Be a responsible grown-up. Because grown-up aren't always responsible. But well, Aaron, I thank you so much for joining us and for talking about this and explaining the diversion program and just really outlining, you know, the consequences that come for those who go through, for those who don't go through, or for repeat offenders. We really appreciate your
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks again. All right, and we'll be back after this. Stay with us.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
And we're back. We're talking about drinking and driving, and to not do it.
Right.
Yep, that's an important thing.
Yes.
Because everybody thinks, oh, I'm better, I can do it.
Yeah, I can do this. I'm fine.
Yeah,
it's only a drink or two.
But no, and you know, sometimes you're out there and other things happen, and the consequences are nightmarish because you've had a couple of drinks and weren't paying attention.
Yes, you know, and to my understanding too, you know, I've recently become aware that if you've had a drink or two and you are in an accident, and under typical circumstances, if you didn't have alcohol in your system, it wouldn't have been your fault. under the law. It was clearly another person's doing based on how the hit took place, the accident took place. If alcohol were to be found in your system, that you would be at fault for the accident if the other person didn't have
So if you're
alcohol in
over
their
the
system.
limit, you're at fault no matter whose fault.
No matter
it was.
whose fault it was technically. And so that's something to be mindful of. And I guess it would make sense in the sense that if you are under the influence of alcohol, you may have played a part in your reaction in to avoid or not to avoid, to speed up or slow down or what have you. And so that comes into play. And so something to be mindful of, that even if somebody else were to, under the circumstances, have been technically at fault forensically, you would be
You're at fault.
At fault.
Because you blew over the limit.
Right.
Or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's crazy. So I guess, I'm finding it weird to say, how can a counselor help? How can a counselor help?
Well,
just say.
having awareness, having people develop an awareness about the severity of drinking and driving. A lot of the people that we provide services to, that we counsel, who have a DUI and they're in the diversion program and they're wanting to have it expunged from their record, they maybe never really thought about it before. It's not something that's on their mind. They went out and had a couple of beers or a drink or so and they got pulled over. That's pretty much what happens. They were swerved out a little bit, or they usually had a minor traffic violation, and in that minor traffic violation, then they were given a breathalyzer test and the sobriety test, and they didn't pass. And then they find themselves in a situation. And then in their own mind, they have thought, this is something that happens to somebody else, it doesn't happen to me, and or nothing significant happened. I didn't kill anybody, I didn't get into a car accident, I got pulled over. And they minimize the experience. Well, to bring awareness to it, okay, consider this a lesson, an expensive lesson, but perhaps something that prevents you from down the line. Because if you think that you can get away with this now, then you are more inclined to try to do it again. Because the more we get away with things, human nature, we're going to keep doing it.
Tribe, yeah.
And so counseling, the role that counseling plays in that is just reiterating over and over and over and just beating it in that we don't want a next time, because the next time could be fatal for you or for somebody else.
Okay, we're running out of time. Tips before we go?
Yes, and so it's important to encourage responsible behavior. So those who are not drinking, if you see somebody who is drinking, encourage responsible behavior and help them make choices that will not get them in trouble or kill someone. Plan for transportation, Uber, Lyft, taxis, designated drivers, a friend, all of that, very important. Intervene if someone is about to drive under the influence. Stop them, have that courageous conversation and let them know that they're impaired and that they're not in a place where they can make that decision. And support initiatives that promote sober driving. And so that we want people to be responsible when they drive. It's a big machine, it is a deadly machine, and we need to be mindful of that.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for today. We want to thank our special guest, Aaron Hall, and all of you for joining us. Take care of yourselves and others. Until next time, stay safe and keep coping today.